May the grace and peace of Jesus be with all of you. So, what a beautiful day. It's been so, yes, we've finally have a little bit of spring peeking through up here in Canada. So, on this St. Joseph's Day, in front of the Peace Tower of Canada's, center of Canada's government, we're going to do something historic today. Now, as a sometime university professor, now a professor of human rights, I could easily lecture for 3 hours, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to inspire you, first with knowledge, and then with winning strategy. Before your eyes this afternoon, I'm going to redefine the terms of the abortion debate from now on, and give you confidence that we can win the victory of equal human rights for all humans, born and preborn, far more quickly than you ever imagined. And we can end all the incessant attacks on religious freedom and democracy itself at the same time, because in my book, Democracy 101 and the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy, the antidote to worldwide creeping totalitarianism, now threatening human rights, religious freedom, and lasting democracy, I prove in detail that pro-life equals pro-democracy, and this afternoon, I can prove it with just the top 6 facts. Now, this afternoon, I can only give you a taste of all the educational resources and winning strategy that Human Rights and Freedoms Forever has been developing ever since 2 years ago. The Ontario CPSO took away doctors' democratic freedom of conscience and free speech to object to killing humans by abortion, specifically to ensure abortion access unimpeded by the pesky morals of anyone who believes that humans are equal and precious, which is the foundation of democracy. This means in Ontario, democratic freedoms of some citizens can be trampled as long as it means humans can be killed without anybody complaining, like in any totalitarian state. Now, once you realize how powerfully compelling and unassailable these new educational resources and strategies are, I hope that great hope growing inside of you will make you hunger for more, and we can fill you. I encourage everyone here to fill out the sign-up sheets on the table for email updates from Human Rights and Freedoms Forever, and I encourage all to come to Lasting Democracy Study Nights. Lasting Democracy, starting tomorrow. So if you're here today, you can, and you get inspired by what I'm going to share today, you can start coming tomorrow to engage the new strategies that I'm going to introduce you to today. Yes, so we're going to have Lasting Democracy Study Nights here in our nation's capital every Monday from 7 to 9, starting tomorrow evening. Details on the table. Now, to get more fully than you can today, the solid human rights education which is necessary to preserve democracy now under attack here in Canada and around the world, simply because the West has forgotten the foundational principles of human rights and democracy. Simply knowing and spreading to others the historical and scientific facts and clear sound logic underlying and undergirding all of our human rights and democratic freedoms will go a long way to ending both abortion and all the current attacks on the traditional Western values human rights and freedoms are historically and logically built on. Can I get water? I forgot my water. Thank you very much. I'm not perfect. I'm just speaking the truth that I've learned. So, my book, Democracy 101 and the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy, powerfully demonstrates how traditional Western values are absolutely essential to both the original development of and the long-term maintenance of human rights and democratic freedoms for everyone. And it identifies 3 wrong turns the West took that have resulted in the current creeping totalitarianism. But to introduce any thinking person briefly to this education necessary to preserve democracy now under attack, I have distilled the following top 6 historical facts pertaining only to decriminalized abortion as the last of the 3 wrong turns. For the others, come to Lasting Democracy Study Nights. or read Democracy 101 to get the full story of what went wrong and what we can do about it. Now, briefly recalling first the cold, hard scientific reality that every single human life is a unique, living, individual, biological human organism with absolutely unique human DNA, utterly distinct from his or her parents at every age and stage of his or her human life cycle, from zygote, which is a fertilized egg, to senior adult. And this is not in dispute, but is established scientific fact. I add to this the following top 6 facts, or clusters of facts, that few know about human rights history, which prove that pro-life equals pro-democracy. Fact 1. Pro-choice abortion philosophy and the parental right to choose to raise or abort one's child is not new, but ancient. Part of the brutal ancient mindset where human life was cheap, not precious, before there were any legally recognized human rights. The pro-choice parental right to choose to either raise one's child or to legally kill him or her by abortion is not new, only the name is new. Before the 4th century, it was normal for parents to legally choose to kill their unwanted human children by abortion or infanticide, which some of today's pro-choice philosophers, being logical, similarly advocate for, calling infanticide after-birth abortion. It was also normal for governments to legally enslave or kill their citizens, human citizens at will, for exactly the same underlying reason. There were no legally recognized human rights, including no legally recognized inherent human right to live, which is the most basic human right without which all the others are meaningless. Governments felt no necessary obligation to either protect or serve human lives for exactly the same reason that parents felt no obligation to necessarily raise their children, but could choose to kill them by abortion. Human life was considered cheap, not precious. Parents could sell their children into slavery or abort them because there were no recognized human rights. If you did not know this fact, or cluster of facts, and you are pro-choice, this fact alone should make you rethink your position for the sake of the safety of all humanity. Fact 2. These facts are a big deal, so I need a little more water. Human rights were first legally recognized in 318 AD with the criminalization of abortion and infanticide, because human life then started to be recognized as precious, not cheap. And therefore, killing humans is wrong. This was a new revelation in the 4th century. So, the pro-life principle that every human life, without exception, is not cheap but precious and equally precious, such that governments are obligated to protect all human lives, is also not new but ancient. Only the name pro-life is new. It is specifically a Christian principle, which the West first adopted in 318 AD, 5 years after Christianity was legalized and ceased to be brutally persecuted by the brutal ancient mindset Christianity gradually replaced in 313 AD. They stopped killing Christians in 313 AD, and then Christians taught the West to stop killing babies, to stop killing humans. This Christian pro-life principle was first given practical expression when, for the first time, human rights became legally recognized and protected by law with the 318 AD criminalization of abortion and infanticide, specifically because human life was no longer considered cheap to serve the greater state, but from now on precious, and the state was since then obligated to protect precious human persons obligated to protect precious human lives from the womb. And precious human lives who then became known for the first time as precious persons. The very word and concept of personhood is rooted in the Christian doctrine of the one God in 3 persons who lovingly made humanity, quote, in God's image. So, as long as any humans have been called persons, preborn humans have been called persons with legally recognized human rights. This gradually changed the whole way humans were governed. Before this, Western governments were judged by their civic accomplishments, often on the backs of their chief human subjects, 1/3 of whom were slaves. After this, Western governments were judged by how well or poorly they treated the precious human persons from the womb they ruled, because it was since then, since 318 AD, generally recognized in the West that, surprise, surprise, killing humans is wrong. If you do not know this fact and you are pro-choice, this fact alone should make you rethink your position for the sake of all humanity. Should probably take a sip after each of the facts, eh? Fact 3. Precious human life was protected by law or custom right from its beginning in the womb, from the 4th century to the 20th century, during which time modern human rights and democratic freedoms gradually but logically developed from the foundational principle that every human life is equally precious, which is why each human deserves an equal say or vote. Until, so 1700 years, human life was protected in the womb until the first 2 modern nations to decriminalize abortion were Soviet Russia in 1920 and Nazi Germany in 1934. Totalitarian states threatening the lives and freedoms of citizens, just like those back when legal abortion was the ancient norm. These 2 governments, the Soviets and the Nazis, perpetrated the 2 largest genocides of born humans in history. The Soviet Holodomor, the forced starvation to death of 7 to 10 million Ukrainian humans in 1932 to 33, just as... We'll wait for the clock. Okay, that's a short one. Good. So, yes, these governments, after legally decriminalizing abortion, they perpetrated the 2 biggest genocides of born humans in history, Soviet Holodomor of Ukrainians, just as the Nazi Holocaust of 6 million Jewish humans plus handicapped humans was getting started. And this was after decriminalized abortion had already established in Soviet Russia and Nazi Germany that there was no longer any legally recognized inherent human right to live, as had been recognized by law or custom since 318 AD. Thus, logically, these governments no longer felt any obligation to protect or serve born humans either, logically leading them to descend back into the oppressive governmental totalitarianism that was normal in ancient times, back when legal abortion was normal. If you did not know this fact, and you are pro-choice, this fact alone should make you rethink your position for the sake of all humanity. I'm lucky. It's only because I'm a scholar. I taught a university course covering the first millennium, during which all the changes in Western thought happened, that I even know this, right? Which is why, as an educator, as Professor Baptiste, I've got to tell people what I know, what I've learned, because I'm a scholar. I deal with the ancient documents all the time. I know what the West used to be like, I know what it's like now, and I know how it got there. And that's what we're going to deal with a little bit here today. Just to give you a taste, because you need to go to the Lasting Democracy Study Nights, which I hope will crop up all over Canada, the US, and the world, because anybody can set one of these up and then just get a copy of Democracy 101 and the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy, and you can run Lasting Democracy Study Nights so we can teach people where their human rights and freedoms come from, just to make sure that they last forever on their firm, solid, traditional, historical, scientific, and logical foundations. Okay, so, fact 4. It's tradition I have to take a sip after for each fact. 3 important things happened in 1948, specifically intending to make sure anything like the dehumanizing Nazi atrocities that denied human rights to some humans never threatened democracy and human rights again. 1. The Nuremberg war crimes trials condemned the Nazis for legal abortion. which they encouraged mothers to ask for, describing legal abortion as an inhumane act, quote, an act of extermination, quote, and a crime against humanity. Because, so why did Nuremberg condemn the Nazis for legal abortion that they encouraged mothers to ask for as a crime against humanity? Because the newly formed United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights declared the same year of 1948 that human rights are for all humans, quote, without distinction of any kind. That's from Article 2. Because, quote, from the preamble of the Universal Declaration, recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Also in 1948, number 3, the 1948 Declaration of Geneva, in response to the Nazis decriminalizing both human-killing abortion and human-killing euthanasia, in violation of the 2,500-year Hippocratic medical tradition that doctors do not kill patients, similarly reaffirmed the Hippocratic Oath tradition in the Doctor's Promise. This is from the 1948 Declaration of Geneva, quote, I will maintain the utmost respect for human life from the time of conception. Even under threat, I will not use my medical knowledge contrary to the laws of humanity, end quote. So, in 1948, the West knew that killing humans is wrong, and the doctors don't kill patients, because humans have inherent human rights. And at the Nuremberg, the West realized that everybody has a human responsibility to recognize those rights in other humans, or else totalitarianism and atrocities happen. So this is key. While the Nazi atrocities which degraded and devalued human life in so many ways were still fresh in everyone's minds, everyone recognized that decriminalized abortion and euthanasia, with which the Nazis would have forcefully imposed on the Free West if the Nazis had won World War II, were a consistently logical part of the whole anti-human Nazi approach to human life, and so treated them as crimes against humanity. In any country where the equal precious value of every human life, or equal human rights for all humans, is not a given, but considered a matter of opinion. Oh, that's your opinion that every human has human rights, right? Or it's politics. Oh, that's your politics that you think every human has human rights, right? So in any country where the equal precious value of every human life, or equal human rights for not all humans, is not a given, but considered a matter of opinion and politics, rather than as the very foundation of human rights and democracy, which it is, like in 1930s Germany concerning Jewish humans, and like today concerning preborn humans, that country has already lost its democratic soul, and like in 1930s Germany, its democracy simply cannot last. If you do not know this fact, and you are pro-choice, that is, pro-choice-to-kill-humans, this fact alone should make you rethink your position for the sake of all humanity. Please do. Number 5. So it's fact 5. It's tradition. I have to take another sip. As any thinking person would totally expect, once knowing the above facts, of course the Free West, since following the totalitarian Soviet and Nazi precedent of decriminalizing the abortion of preborn humans, thereby canceling out the legally recognized inherent human right to live, which is the foundation of all human rights and freedoms, has in fact introduced creeping totalitarianism into Western democracies, gradually but logically undermining human rights and democratic freedoms, and making Western democracies gradually take on more and more characteristics of totalitarian states. So, just like traditional Western believers in the supreme and equal value of every human life without exception in Nazi Germany were afraid to speak openly their traditional belief on behalf of Jewish humans who had been legally devalued and killed in the millions, for fear of negative consequences like losing their jobs or being arrested, so today, more and more citizens in more and more professions and jurisdictions all across the West, not here, just here in Canada, are becoming more and more afraid to speak at work. This same traditional democracy grounding belief on behalf of preborn humans who have been similarly legally devalued and killed in the millions. For fear. So today, right now in our democracies, today, right here in Ontario, in Canada, and in the US, and in Europe, right now there are people who are afraid to speak their traditional democracy grounding values at work for fear of job discipline or losing funding. And peaceful human rights advocates peacefully protesting human killing near abortion clinics have been similarly arrested and jailed. Like, think about this. You can be arrested for peacefully protesting the killing of humans. Here in Canada and in the US and in a lot of places. That should make any humans pretty scared. Oh, it's an arrestable offense to peacefully protest the taking of human lives. That should scare you. Okay, so in any case, many, in particular, there's certain professions, above all the medical profession, that is most affected by this. Many medical professionals and parents and others, right now in Canada and throughout the West, experience truncation of their democratic freedom to express the traditional values human rights and democratic freedoms are historically and logically built on, like killing humans is wrong, for fear of consequences, like in totalitarian states. How many of you have experienced this? Raise your hands. Right? You know that you're not always free to speak at work. Yes, but you'd be worried about, there could be job consequences. I knew somebody who worked, here I'm in front of my government, I knew somebody who works for the government, who used to work for the government. They don't anymore because it got too uncomfortable to work for the government. And you know what they told me? I had a sign. You know what? Canada, I'm kind of off the script here, but it's a good point, that Canada is one of 3 countries in the world that has no restrictions on abortion whatsoever. You know what the other 2 are? Communist China and Communist North Korea, totalitarian states. So Canada has put itself, since 1988, Canada has put itself in the position, in the company of totalitarian states that have no restrictions on abortion whatsoever. And the problem with getting off the script, of course, is that then I lose my train of thought more easily. But, oh yes. So I had a sign, I had a lawn sign, and it said, preborn human rights, protect preborn human rights. It said, protect preborn human rights, we need a law.ca. For the website, right? We need a law.ca. And basically, so here in our supposed democratic Canada, we had, I've got a sign, right? A lawn sign. I put it on my lawn sign, and it said, we need a law. So it just says, what could be more legitimate in a democracy, right? To say, hey, let's have a discussion. We've got abortion laws that only communist totalitarian states have abortion laws like ours here in Canada, so we should talk about that. We need a law to define abortion and some restrictions, like most countries have, at least some, right? Because here in Canada, you can get an abortion all the way up to full term, 9 months and everything, and most people don't even know that's the reality of the law in Canada. And so what could be more legitimate to discuss, than that? But this government worker that I talked to, and I offered her a sign, hey, want a lawn sign like mine? And she said, you know what? She felt that she couldn't put a lawn sign on her private lawn without getting job consequences working for the government. Now that's a scary amount of totalitarian belief control right there, and a lack of democratic freedom. Not to mention, those signs that I had, my signs got vandalized several times on my lawn. And it's very interesting, right? Because there's a traditional democratic principle that says, though I disagree with what you say, I will defend to the death your right to say it. Not the pro-choice abortion side. There's been, again, peaceful intellectual debates on university campuses, and they've been vandalized. Here in BC, a couple of years ago or whatever, I forget how long ago, right? Campus security was surprisingly absent, and they vandalized You know, instead of having rational intellectual discussion about abortion laws and about human rights for all humans, they vandalize stuff because the pro-choice abortion side, they don't believe, though I disagree with what you say, I'll defend to the death your right to say it. They want to truncate and we've got a whole slew of laws now that we'll talk about later once I'm back on the script, that take away, that restrict our freedom of speech here in Canada. So, in any case, getting back to the script here, so many medical professionals and parents and other citizens right now in Canada and throughout the world experience truncation of their democratic freedom to express the traditional values human rights and democratic freedoms are historically and logically built on, like killing humans is wrong, for fear of consequences like in totalitarian states. So, creeping totalitarianism is a worldwide pro-choice, anti-democratic trend which is driven by the internal logic of pro-choice abortion philosophy itself, which, to continue unimpeded, necessarily must bully and hammer away at the democratic rights and freedoms of those doctors and other medical professionals who object to killing humans, and to all who believe human life is inherently valuable, to silence them, to make sure humans can be killed without anybody complaining, like in every totalitarian state, ancient or modern. This gradual loss of democracy by many small stages, as in 1930 Germany, is completely logical because, like any structure, democracy simply cannot last without its foundation, which is the equal precious value of every human life without exception, which the government is always obligated to protect. Without this democratic foundation, we are becoming dinos. That is an acronym for democracies in name only. If you did not know this fact and you are pro-choice, this fact alone should make you rethink your position for the sake of all humanity. Okay, now there goes the clock again. And by the way, I just add parenthetically that the treatise that started all this, that when I, as a scholar, and I started reflecting on a lifetime of research into Western history, and being a university professor of a university course covering the first millennium, and I noted in that original treatise that chapter 4 of my treatise, I trace, because actually when I was a high school teacher, I taught the Nazi Holocaust in schools, and it always struck me how gradual the loss of democracy in Germany was, by many small stages, right? In chapter 4 of my book, I actually traced that we've already gone through, here in Canada, in the US and other places, we've already gone through about 7 or 8 of the early stages of the gradual loss of democracy by small stages in Germany, right? We have to be aware of what's going on. It's well said, right? If you don't know the lessons of history, you're doomed to repeat its mistakes. We are totally doing that in the West, and that's but it's all out of ignorance, right? Education is the antidote to ignorance. So I've been an educator all my life. I've been a student or an educator. I've been on one side of the desk or another. I'm either in PhD studies or whatever, right? I'm on one side of the desk or the other all my life. I'm a lifelong learner. We need to learn from the history, and that's what I wrote Democracy 101 and the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy for, to make sure that the West has the education they need to preserve democracy now under attack. Now, fact 6. Legal abortion, with its profitable abortion industry, is every bit as fundamentally incompatible with democracy as legal slavery with its profitable slave trade was, for precisely the same reason. Both, like the Nazis, deny human rights to some humans, making the term human rights meaningless if not all humans have them, and both violate the same traditional foundational principle of human rights and democracy, that every human life without exception is equal and precious, which is the underlying reason Western governments stopped being oppressive and totalitarian and eventually gave every human a vote or democratic say in his or her own governance in the first place. Legal abortion needs to be abolished for precisely the same reason legal slavery did. It is fundamentally anti-human and anti-democratic. Few know that legally devalued black humans by the tens of thousands died tightly chained together in their own waste on slave ships before they even got the chance to be slaves, at plantations with poor safety standards where many died working as slaves, just as legally devalued Jewish humans were killed in the millions in Nazi death camps, and just as legally devalued preborn humans are today killed in the millions in abortion clinics. The original Christian abolitionists called for the abolition of legal slavery for the sake of equal human rights for all humans, which is the foundation of democracy. Pro-lifers are literally the new abolitionists calling for the abolition of legal abortion because they are championing precisely the same foundational principle of human rights and democracy that every human, without exception, whether black, Jewish, or preborn, has equal human rights, including an inherent human right to live. Only ignorance and bigotry ever denies human rights to some humans, and the age bigotry of legal abortion is every bit as vile as the race bigotry of legal slavery or Nazi death camps. Worse, it is the bigotry against the human race itself, eradicating the inherent human right to live of everybody, since every one of us used to be a fetal-age human who, in the perspective of legal abortion, could have been legally killed at fetal age, and therefore none of us, neither you nor I, have any legally recognized inherent human right to live since abortion was decriminalized. Each one of us was only allowed to live in violation of the clear intention of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights to apply human rights to all humans, quote, from Article 2, without distinction of any kind, because, quote, recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Now, there's been a lot of mischief over the fact that the unfortunate wording of Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says everyone is born equal. But despite that unfortunate wording, there is no possible, logical, reasonable, rational way that you can interpret the whole text of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as if it meant to exclude preborn humans from having human rights. And in fact, it would make the whole thing meaningless. There's in detail Article 23 of the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy in my book, and Article 7 of the New Abolitionist Manifesto of Solidarity, which is also in the book, clearly discuss the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and how there is no possible way, especially in its 1948 historical context, which I talked to you about earlier, there's no way that you can say that the Declaration doesn't apply to preborn humans or wasn't meant to. There's no way you can get away with that, unless maybe you had a lobotomy or something. But, because, for example, if preborn humans are somehow not members of the human family in the meaning of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights so that they can be aborted, then nobody has an inherent human right to live after all, so the Declaration is meaningless since all of us used to be preborn humans who could have been aborted. And nobody has an inherent human right, so why does it even use the word inherent, right? So, so Article 23 of the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy makes clear how decriminalized abortion is a betrayal of everything the Universal Declaration of Human Rights intended to protect humanity from totalitarianism. So if you do not know this cluster of facts and you are pro-choice, this fact alone should also make you rethink your position for the sake of all humanity. Now, these top 6 facts together alone, and there's a lot more facts than that in the book, right? And my other book, manuscript, the treatise, The Education Necessary to Preserve Democracy Now Under Attack. These top 6 facts alone prove far beyond reasonable doubt that pro-choice abortion philosophy, with its right to kill humans, has since ancient times been the enemy of human rights and freedoms, has already eliminated everyone's legally recognized inherent human right to live, and is currently destroying genuine democracy through pro-choice, creeping totalitarian policies, specifically to ensure abortion access at the high cost of human rights and democratic freedoms. Pro-life equals pro-democracy. Now, these top 6 facts, which range from ancient times, which is more my scholarly specialty, through to modern times to this present day, are all extremely pertinent to today's question of whether preborn humans have human rights, and extremely pertinent to the question of whether any humans have human rights, which itself is not a given worldwide outside of the West, the traditionally Christian West, right? Therefore, any opinion on whether or not the abortion killing of preborn humans should be legal that does not know any one of these facts, which few know, is an uninformed opinion based on an uneducated ignorance of the most pertinent history and logic underlying human rights and democratic freedoms. Now, this is an important point to make. Nobody who today is pro-choice consciously chose to be so, even though they were fully consciously aware of these top 6 facts of human rights history. Meaning, basically, all of those who are pro-choice, politicians or voters, hold the position only because of ignorance. Lasting democracy needs people's opinions on life issues to be based on educated knowledge of the most pertinent facts of human life and freedom, not based in ignorance of the facts most pertinent to the origins and future of democracy. Basically, no pro-choicer has an educated opinion. And this is a great out for them, though, actually, if they take advantage of it, so they can change their position in response to getting a solid human rights education like the one I just outlined, and save face. And I want to make this point, like, as pro-lifers here, I don't want to treat pro-choicers as the enemy. Most of the people who identify themselves as pro-choice, a lot of them would never have an abortion themselves or would never encourage somebody else to have one. They just have been fooled by the false philosophy that says, oh, choice, it sounds like it has something to do with freedom, so we think we can't oppose freedom, right? Like it's a lot of the people who would describe themselves as pro-choice are just ignorant, right? And you know what? It's no shame to be uneducated or ignorant. Everyone is uneducated, and I speak as an educator, and a professor, and everyone is uneducated in something until they get educated. Everyone is ignorant of something until they have a chance to learn. So all pro-choicers who get exposed to Democracy 101 have a brief opportunity to save face and say, oh, I didn't know the facts of human rights history, I will change my position now. Technically, they should have known that killing humans is wrong already, and that abortion kills humans, not cats or dogs or anything else. But that's okay, that's cool, as long as they do the right thing now, right? We can charitably grant that they were just too uneducated to know better before now. But Democracy 101 also makes clear there are only 2 reasons why anyone is ever pro-choice. They are either ignorant or they are evil. And their response to Democracy 101, once they become aware of it, will reveal which of the 2 they are. If they were just ignorant, then they will adjust their ways, even if it's inconvenient, right? To put humanity first over our personal convenience and whatever we gain from being pro-choice, right? And obviously there's a lot of workers in the big money abortion industry, right? Who, they benefit directly from killing humans and from not treating humans equally, right? But anybody who's just ignorant, once they become aware of the facts of human rights history, will, even if it's inconvenient and there's an adjustment to make to put humanity before their selfish concerns, they will do that. They'll do the right thing, because they want human rights and freedoms to last for everybody. But if they are too selfish, self-centered, or evil to care about humanity's long-term safety, but for their personal convenience or advantage still try to get out of admitting that killing humans is wrong, then they show themselves like the Soviets and Nazis, who were the first governments to decriminalize abortion, because they also didn't believe that killing humans is wrong. They put themselves in that category that, oh, no, I refuse to just straight out admit that killing humans is wrong. I gotta find some way around it. I gotta find some way of making exceptions for some humans, right? Well, every bigot does that, right? So, every bigot makes exceptions for some humans to make sure that they don't have equal human rights. But equal human rights are the foundation of democracy. So, interestingly enough, for the first time, I'm teaching a course in formal logic to young people, and I guarantee abortion would not still be legal if they taught logic in schools. One perfect, valid, sound, logical syllogism is, All humans have human rights. Preborn humans are humans. Therefore, preborn humans have human rights. There is no valid or reasonable way to reject the logic of this valid, sound syllogism without making yourself look silly and bigoted, if not outright evil, like all the slave owners and Nazis, etc., who also deny human rights to some humans. So, and of course, now there's always these backup excuses they fall out back in. If they attempt to suggest a human fetus is not human, or a tissue blob, like they said at the time abortion was decriminalized, have you ever noticed that? That we still have abortion laws when at the time that abortion was decriminalized, the pro-abortion side was saying, oh, it's just a tissue blob, right? The rich medical scientific science of the human life cycle from conception, in the womb, that cannot sustain that anymore. Now, what did they say? Did they say, oh, gee, I guess we were wrong, it's not just a tissue blob, it's a completely unique individual biological human organism with unique human DNA, distinct from the mother. Okay, I guess now that we know that it's not a tissue blob, I guess we'll have to admit that, okay, we shouldn't do abortions. No, they didn't do that. They decided, okay, forget that. We just want to have abortions for our own convenience, and it doesn't matter about humanity and whether humans are being killed. So we're going to talk about choice now. We're going to distract everybody by talking about choice. The only thing is, what they didn't realize, and it's because I'm a scholar steeped in the ancient documents all the time, that it was so obvious for me that, pro-choice philosophy, only the name is new, that pro-choice philosophy is ancient. What they picked instead was the philosophy that drove the ancient, brutal, totalitarian world, right? That, yes, the Roman Empire recognized the parental right to raise or kill your child by abortion. It also it also had the right to enslave its citizens and kill its citizens at will. Why? Because humans were cheap, not precious, right? So it was very silly, but again, all of this is based in ignorance, right? The whole pro-choice approach is based in ignorance. Unless it's evil, like the Soviets and Nazis. It's one or the other, so it's which are you? If you're pro-choice, you're either ignorant or evil. If you want to save face, you better claim that you're only ignorant, because the only alternative is that you're evil. Like everybody who denies human rights to some humans and doesn't accept that killing humans is wrong, we call those people evil. So, yes, that some people will, some of the pro-choicers, they'll try to get out, oh, it's just a tissue blob, If they say, if anybody today, I actually still hear people call it the tissue blob today, right? And they're just inviting you to ridicule them for being so uneducated and ignorant of the rich, hard science of human life cycle now available, and for not even knowing that preborn humans are humans. If they suggest a preborn human is not a human being, it's like they say, okay, you're right, scientifically we have to admit that a human fetus is human. Oh, but it's not a human being. It's not a human person. Well, if they say that, they're just advertising their ignorance of the meaning and history of these terms too. Being literally means existence, and the human existence of preborn humans has never been in doubt. They're not feline beings like cats, or canine beings like dogs, nor bovine beings like cows. They are specifically human beings. And historically, as long as any humans have been called persons, preborn humans have been called persons with legally recognized human rights since the 4th century. So every single time in history that somebody's biological humanity has been admitted without admitting their human personhood, gross, inhuman injustice was the result. Any pro-choice age bigot who is ignorant and bigoted enough to deny human rights to young preborn humans by claiming preborn humans are not persons have just put themselves in the same category as every slave-owning or Nazi race bigot who also denied human rights to black or Jewish or handicapped humans by claiming they were not human persons, even though they could not deny their scientific biological humanity. Native North Americans and women have also been legally denied fully equal human rights by being legally denied their human personhood, even though no one could deny their scientific humanity. Throughout history, only ignorant bigots have ever acknowledged someone's biological humanity but denied their human personhood and their equal human rights. So whenever a pro-choicer denies the human personhood of preborn humans, it is not an argument. It is a declaration of their ignorance and bigotry. Their ignorance of science and of the whole history of human rights and democratic freedoms. My book, Democracy 101 and the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy, uses undisputed historical and scientific facts and clear, sound logic to identify and explicitly articulate the implicit underlying foundations of human rights, which precludes all bigotry against some group of humans, and of all democratic freedoms. These are elaborated more fully in the book, but even just listing them here, as I'm going to, because they're fairly brief, each one of them, no one can reasonably deny these following principles can guarantee lasting democracy in a way nothing else can. Now, this is a significant thing, so I'll have to make sure I've got my little sip of water. Aqua vitae, there we go. Foundational principle of human rights and democracy, number one, that every human life, without exception, without discrimination, and, quote, without distinction of any kind, is supremely and equally valuable and precious, obligating governments to protect and serve all precious humans who have, quote, inherent, equal, and inalienable human rights, end quote, instead of being oppressive and or totalitarian towards the governed. Note, the quoted phrases are from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Foundational principle of human rights and democracy, number two, that because every human life without exception is precious, every human life without exception must be free from all government coercion in matters of belief so that they may freely, without impediment, freely seek and find this wonderful truth foundational to democracy, that their human lives are supremely and equally valuable and precious. Without government interference, without government telling or teaching the humans governed any differently, and without governments treating humans any differently in violation of their human rights. These two principles together are the implicit, underlying first principles or logical starting point of both human rights and democracy as we know it. Now, those are principles that I've, in my two books, The Education Necessary to Preserve Democracy Now Under Attack and Democracy 101, I've identified those from, again, undisputed historical facts, connected with clear logic and knowing the science of human life. In addition to those foundational principles of human rights and democracy, I've also put together three core principles of lasting democracy. And this is, again, proven by history, because where these principles have not been followed, democracy was lost, like in Nazi Germany. So, core principle of lasting democracy, number one. Lasting democracy requires full and uncompromising legal recognition of the inherent human right to live and the traditional Western belief expressed in the simple maxim, killing humans is wrong, because human rights are for all humans or else they're meaningless, if being human is not enough to have them. Core principle of lasting democracy, number two. Lasting democracy did not grant unqualified freedom to individual humans, but lasting democracy restricts individual freedom with just criminal laws which uphold the inherent human right to live and the maxim, killing humans is wrong. Laws which protect the human rights and property of other humans and encourage mature respect for all humanity, which ensures that humans are always treated as precious persons, not as mere tools or objects to be used or thrown away when they can be no longer used, as we know happens in euthanasia. For lasting world peace, nation states also need to be guided by just international laws which similarly uphold the inherent human right to live, human rights for all humans, and the maxim, killing humans is wrong. Core principle of lasting democracy, number three. Lasting democracy does not grant an unqualified anything the majority asks for or accepts, but lasting democracy must hold its citizens and its politicians constitutionally accountable to the foundational principles of human rights and democracy, including the inherent human right to live and the maxim, killing humans is wrong, because human rights are for all humans. Or else, genuine democracy can easily be lost to creeping totalitarianism, wherein democracies, in name only, as in 1930s Germany, gradually but increasingly take on the characteristics of totalitarian states, all of which deny killing humans is wrong, and all of which think the government decides which humans may or may not be legally killed, instead of recognizing lasting democratic government's foundation that governments are obligated to always protect and serve always precious human lives, because human rights are for all humans. So, having established what democracy is founded on and what can make it last, it is easy to identify, next section, the top 6 major assaults on democracy in Pro-Choice-to-Kill-Humans Canada since 2015, which violate at least one, each one of these 6 violate at least one of the above foundational principles of lasting democracy and the core principles. Okay. I'm going to have to go back to that, taking a sip before each section. So these are shorter than the other ones. That's a good thing. Most of them. Number 1. Despite immigrant Canadian citizens who lived under Soviet, communist, and other totalitarian governments giving the CPSO, that's the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, feedback that they were pursuing totalitarian-style policies, doctors, they were ignored by the CPSO, and doctors' democratic freedom of conscience rights have been taken away in Ontario already by the CPSO 2 years ago, and now the Ontario government is, through Bill 84, is trying to legally take away, like put in law, that doctors do not have the right to say no to killing humans. They have to be involved in abortion and euthanasia, right? I think Bill 84 might deal more specifically with euthanasia, but they're putting it in law that they can't say no to killing humans. They can't follow the 2,500-year Hippocratic Oath. This year is Canada's 150th birthday. Our country is only 150 years old. The medical tradition is 2,500 years old. Oh, but they're quite happy. And the medical tradition, you know what? Explicitly, the oldest known form of the Hippocratic Oath specifically prohibits abortion. And, but you know what? Here in Canada's merely 150th anniversary, we're going to take away, or we've already taken away, doctors' rights to say no to killing humans, and taken away the foundational basis of doctor-patient trust for 2,500 years. Because doctors, up until recently, could be trusted not to kill patients, but no longer. So, that relates to number 2. So we've got the doctor's freedom of conscience is one major assault on democracy in Canada. Some citizens who are in the medical profession, it's not just doctors, right? You can lose your job if you're a nurse or in the medical profession and you say too much that's pro-life, right? If I say too much that's for the foundational principles of human rights and democracy, which are pro-life, you can lose your job. Well, that shouldn't happen in a healthy democracy, should it? But it does. We don't have a healthy democracy. So, euthanasia is also a major assault on democracy. No longer recognizing the inherent human right to live since abortion was decriminalized, the Canadian government just slipped back into the old style of government that was normal before there were any legally recognized human rights, where the government decides which humans live and die. So the government decides, before the 4th century, when there were no human rights, it was normal that the government, for one thing, the government was in charge of what citizens may or may not believe. Anyway, so yes. The government decides, so they slip back into the ancient practice. Our governments now have slipped back into the ancient practice where the government decides just which humans are protected and just which humans can be legally killed, instead of being obligated to always protect equally precious human life. Euthanasia also insidiously reintroduces the legal killing of born humans as well as preborn humans, like in any totalitarian state. So, free speech violations. We have federal and provincial bills right now limiting free speech. We even have a grossly misnamed Human Rights Commission, which literally does not know the first thing about human rights, that killing humans is wrong. If it did, it would charge the government for legal abortion that eradicates the inherent human right to live. The primary human right. So, like I say, our misnamed Human Rights Commissions literally do not know the first thing about human rights. And the head of this body has indicated that it is quite happy to suppress the free speech by prosecuting people who will not use newly invented pronoun words with no history in any language that serve a new agenda with no history in the culture. This is the opposite of democratic government of the people, by the people, for the people, which is Abraham Lincoln's classic description of democratic government. But it works. It's not just an American thing. That works for democracy in general. So having to be afraid of what you say or don't say, especially if it is traditional and reflects your country's grounding values, is a feature of totalitarian states. Now, for more evidence of growing creeping totalitarianism in Canada, we have the muzzling of duly elected federal representatives who are not allowed to voice their own traditional conscience nor to represent the traditional constituents who elected them if they believe in the traditional foundational principles of human rights and democracy, that every human without exception, including preborn humans, is equal and precious. Now, this is an important point to make. Political parties are not even mentioned in the founding legislation like the British North America Act that makes Canada a country. Political parties are just a convenient way to organize and manage a government of hundreds of elected representatives representing who ideally are representing the people's self-rule, right? Parties are not meant to lord it over the governed, right? They're not meant to bypass the democratic process by forcing whipped elected representatives to toe the party line as if the party rules, like in a totalitarian state, and the elected representatives only represent the party's will to the ruled people. In a democracy, in a healthy democracy, the elected representatives are supposed to represent the people participating in their own governance by choosing representatives they trust will represent their own participation and values in their own governance. So most especially, parties are not meant to circumvent democracy from its foundations by forcing representatives to toe a ProChoice-to-Kill-Humans or pro-choice party line, which directly contradicts the foundational principle of human rights and democracy number 1, which is pro-human right to live or pro-life. And doing so violates core principle of lasting democracy number 3, that lasting democracies must keep their politicians and citizens accountable to democracy's foundations. And note that the foundational principles of democracy are non-partisan. All parties of left and right, at least implicitly, assumed human equality when Canada and all modern democracies were formed. So left or right, all parties should return to their party's pro-life roots if they have strayed. Notice I didn't mention a single specific party in there. I'm just giving you, and actually, as the founder and director of Human Rights and Freedoms Forever, I am deliberately nonpartisan. I made, before the US election, I didn't say anything about either a presidential candidate. I only gave principles for lasting democracy. I said, okay, these are principles for lasting democracy. This should guide your vote. Now, whichever party, left or right, whatever, will do the most for lasting democracy, well, that's what I advise as the founder of Human Rights and Freedoms Forever. So, for the US, Canada, or any country, any democracy that wants to last as one needs to know this. So, number 5, assault on democracy in Canada since 2015, number 5. In Ontario, we have totalitarian-style belief control in the form of the forced indoctrination of school children against parents' loud and wide objections and without any democratic mandate. The Ontario government did not say, elect us and we will teach your children our preferred values with no history in the culture. Not only is this the opposite of democratic government of the people, by the people, for the people, and instead the government telling the people what to believe, like all totalitarian states do, but the particular radically anti-traditional values taught specifically create a demand for the legal abortion which eradicates the legally recognized inherent human right to live and undermines democracy. And I'll take a sip for number 6, which this is the one that bothers me most of all. Ontario Bill 89. There's been a lot of things written about Ontario Bill 89 and talked about how terrible it is in its full implications. But none of the things I've read are as bad, because I had that historical perspective, right? I taught the Nazi Holocaust in schools. I have the ancient background and perspective. I say that it's even worse than most people have said. Bill 89, if passed and once fully implemented, which it won't be fully implemented right away, they never are, but it will be eventually if we don't nip it in the bud now, which is what this is all about. So it has great potential to eventually, like in totalitarian states, make parents live in fear of being reported by anyone to authorities, children's aid societies, who will be given sweeping powers to take their children away, even for traditional child rearing in traditional values which the radically anti-traditional government no longer considers, quote, in the best interest of the child. And Bill 89 even allows the government to replace local children's aid leaders who still want to just protect children from being abused and who do not take well to their new Bill 89 role as a government agency for enforcing parental compliance at home with the government's radically anti-traditional values, which are now already forcefully taught in school against parental objections. So, but in all this, there's good news. I do have good news. That's the bad news of what we're dealing with, and we're wrapping down here, and I got some really exciting good news for you guys coming up here. How do the now clearly articulated foundational principles of human rights and democracy, demonstrated from undisputed historical and scientific facts connected by clear sound logic, help us to deal with all these violations of genuine democracy? Politicians will do whatever they think will get them elected. We have to make them think what will get them elected is for the political parties to field pro-human right to live or pro-life candidates, because educated voters who know the foundational principles of human rights and democracy and the core principles of lasting democracy will only vote for pro-human right to live or pro-life candidates because they are educated enough to know that only politicians who uphold the foundational principles of human rights and democracy are minimally qualified to lead a lasting democracy. All pro-lifers have to do is learn and spread the undisputed facts collected in Democracy 101, and the numbers of educated voters will keep increasing until we eventually reach the necessary critical mass of educated voters needed to ensure the pro-life foundational principles of human rights and democracy are permanently constitutionally enshrined here in Canada and in other countries. Exactly what that number of the critical mass necessary of educated voters will need to be for each country will be different probably, but we need to work on it. And that's what Lasting Democracy Study Nights are all about. And if these crop up all over the world, then we can end abortion and all the attacks on religious freedom. So, to help assist this process, I have redefined the terms of the abortion debate with the following. New terms to clarify the essence of the central dispute of our time. From now on, we don't have to say, where do you stand on, are you pro-choice or are you pro-life? We can say, where do you stand on the current human rights for all humans debate? Do you believe in equal human rights for all humans, or do you believe human rights can and should be denied to some humans? That is, are you pro-human right to live, or pro-choice-to-kill-humans? Now, how does that redefine the issue, right? In order to clarify all future dialogue on human life issues in a way that keeps all the facts of history and human rights and all the facts of the history of human rights and abortion in mind, I have clarified the essence of the pro-life versus pro-choice abortion debate by renaming it the pro-human right to live versus pro-choice-to-kill-humans abortion debate, or alternatively, the human rights for all humans debate, wherein pro-lifers believe in equal human rights for all humans, but pro-choicers believe that human rights are not for all humans, but human rights can be denied to some humans, as pro-choicers deny equal human rights to young preborn humans. Also, as slave-owning bigots denied equal human rights to black humans, as Nazi bigots denied equal human rights to Jewish and handicapped humans. So, there is no intellectually honest way for anyone to deny that these new terms clearly and accurately identify the core essence of the pro-life, pro-choice dispute. So, self-described pro-life citizens are essentially motivated by the core belief that every human has an inherent human right to live, which is the core of the now clearly identified foundational principles of human rights and democracy. No, I'm going to try to wrap this up here, but since human rights are for all humans, or else they are meaningless, if being human is not enough to have them, therefore the abortion killing of humans should be banned, as it was by law or custom since 318 AD. And no one can honestly deny that the key defining factor that distinguishes self-described pro-choice citizens from pro-life or pro-human right to live, or human rights for all human citizens, is that pro-choice citizens are instead essentially for, Latin pro, the choice to kill young humans still in the womb by legal abortion. Therefore logically denying the inherent human right to live, which essentially defines the pro-life side, because pro-choicers do not believe in human rights are for all humans. Pro-choice citizens, by definition, are essentially for the choice to kill preborn humans whose full biological scientific humanity as unique individual biological human organisms with unique DNA, utterly distinct from their parents, is not in dispute but is scientific fact. So by approving abortion and calling it choice, pro-choice citizens are essentially for the choice to kill humans, just like every one of us when we were their age, still in the womb, logically meaning that if they and we could have been legally aborted, none of us have a legally recognized inherent human right to live. I believe that these new terms, pro-human right to live versus pro-choice to kill humans, which definitively clarify the true core essence of the pro-life versus pro-choice abortion debate as the human rights for all humans debate, should help resolve the conflict over abortion quickly, because it takes away the pro-choice's side's ability to, with intellectual dishonesty, pretend that the bottom line of pro-choice philosophy is anything else. Anything else, such as reproductive rights. Have you heard that term? Well, these only sound good until one realizes these logically can only exist instead of human rights, which they replace. If women's rights somehow go beyond the equal human rights to safety and so on, which everybody else shares, and include a right to kill humans by abortion, then logically humans do not have any inherent human right to live after all. A woman with the legal reproductive right to kill her own child herself has no legally recognized inherent human right to live, since her own mother could have legally killed her when she herself was in her mother's womb. But the inherent human right to live, as shown in Democracy 101, is the core of the historical and logical foundational principles of human rights and democracy. Terms like reproductive rights and women's rights are merely insubstantial smoke and mirrors, not legitimate terms to define the abortion debate, since they are calculated to distract attention from the much higher priority issue of genuine human rights, which are obviously violated by legal abortion. Since abortion is still legal only because the majority of Western citizens are not actually ardently either pro-life or pro-choice, but in the middle, usually leaning in one direction or the other, but without serious political commitment to either changing or keeping the legal abortion status quo, I hope that these clarifying new terms of pro-human right to live versus pro-choice to kill humans, which no one can reasonably deny capture the core essence of the abortion dispute, will assist the majority somewhere in the middle to actually realize just what they are and are not supporting by their relative uninvolvement and inaction, one way or the other, in the abortion dispute. And I hope these new terms will motivate them to become educated enough to take the side of equal human rights for all humans, which is the only side that supports the foundational principles of human rights and democracy, so that they can last forever. Because without this, we are literally losing our democracies to creeping totalitarianism, such as those 6 assaults on democracy since 2015. So good news, we don't have to be afraid and bewildered about what to do anymore. Can't you feel how your pro-life arsenal has been getting bigger as this afternoon progresses? I've also identified from history a proven winning strategy, which I want to share with you, but I'm told that I have to get off the stage now. So there's like a couple more sections, just brief. We're through the vast majority of it, so okay, fine. Go on to whatever's next. But just so you know, what I didn't get to yet is a lot of really good news that should be hopefully very inspirational, and hopefully I'll have a chance to mention it later. At the beginning of this historic speech on Parliament Hill, March 19th, 2017, I said, I'm going to inspire you, first with knowledge and then with winning strategy. Before your eyes this afternoon, I am going to redefine the terms of the abortion debate from now on and give you confidence that we can win the victory of equal human rights for all humans, born and preborn, far more quickly than you ever imagined. Now, during the speech at Parliament Hill you have just watched, I did most of what I said I would do in the hour I had to speak during the afternoon Pro-Life on Parliament Hill rally. But due to time constraints, I did not get to introduce, as I intended, the winning strategy for the culture of life to win the cultural war with the culture of death to save humanity forever from creeping totalitarianism. And I did not have time to explain why I am convinced that we can successfully implement this strategy and end both legal abortion and the incessant attacks on religious freedom, which my work shows is directly related to it, far more quickly than you ever imagined. To hear this intended ending of the historic and inspirational speech, you need to go to the soon-to-be-posted Part 2 of the historic speech, Human Rights for All Humans Because Pro-Life Equals Pro-Democracy, which forever redefined the abortion debate worldwide. Part 2, Introduction to the winning strategy for the culture of life to win the cultural war with the culture of death to save humanity forever from creeping totalitarianism.
Before his PhD studies at the Shepsitsky Institute and being a professor at Dominican University College, where he replaced Dr. Andrew Bennett, who was unable to meet his professor obligations due to his appointment as Canada's Ambassador of Religious Freedom, William Baptiste SFO got his master's degree with honors at the Franciscan University of Steubenville, where the philosophy chair testified in writing to the university president of his tremendous academic talent and considerable power of mind. A genius IQ which he has since used to discern and lay out clearly from the tangled web of historical details the golden threads woven throughout history that gave us all our human rights and democratic freedoms described in his treatise, The Education Necessary to Preserve Democracy Now Under Attack, and his new book, Democracy 101 and the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy, the antidote to worldwide creeping totalitarianism, now threatening human rights, religious freedom, and lasting democracy, soon to be published. At Franciscan University, the famous Dr. Scott Hahn wrote William's work was outstanding, excellent, clear, thoughtful, and thorough, and the theology chair Dr. Alan Schreck endorsed William's Donum Veritatis, the Gift of Truth Ministries, as an effective and important means to spread the faith and to promote Christian unity. It really is a gift to the internet generation. He was invited 3 times to the ecumenical Springtime of Faith Rome summits, Catholic and evangelical Christian leaders meeting with Vatican officials, for being considered one of the dynamic leaders building the new Springtime of Faith. Having already co-founded Baptiste Family Ministries with his dear bride Laurel, he recently founded the new non-profit educational organization Human Rights and Freedoms Forever, in response to several major assaults on democracy where he lives since 2015, similar to many current compromises of genuine democracy all over the globe, which he will detail during his speech. Join a worldwide movement of educated citizens standing up in solidarity as democracy pledgers to ensure human rights and democracy last forever on their firm, traditional, historical, scientific, and logical foundations. To access educational resources and strategies to make you a confident champion of human life, religious freedom, and democracy itself, go to protecthumanrightsandfreedoms.archer.ch, order Democracy 101 and the Pledge of Allegiance to Democracy, the antidote to worldwide creeping totalitarianism now threatening human rights, religious freedom, and lasting democracy by emailing democracystore@yahoo and the subject line Democracy 101 book or audiobook. You can support lasting human rights and democracy and get rewards by becoming a patron of Human Rights and Freedoms Forever. Go to patreon.com/Human Rights and Freedoms Forever. Contact Human Rights and Freedoms Forever at outlook.com or call 61613-761-0147 for more information or to become a volunteer democracy leader in your area or start lasting democracy study nights in your area.